All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. Today we're going to talk about Falcons against the now depleted Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We're going to talk Saints Chargers, and then Vikings-Rams Thursday Night Football. And then we'll close out with some NBA conference title odds chat. But let's start off with Falcons-Bucks. This line opened Bucks minus 2.5, Drew. It is now Falcons minus 2.5 after the carnage that has beset the Bucks with Chris Godwin out for the season, most likely. Mike Evans, I presume, is probably not going to play in this game after he aggravated this hamstring injury. Total in this one is 46.5. Do you think that swing is warranted? Also, helping inform the swing is further evidence that the Bucks defense is horrific.
That's a very fair point. I do think it's warranted, but I would say that week 7 was a disaster for me personally, betting, and it was the only bigger disaster was the skill position group for the Buccaneers. I cannot believe that they lost such important pieces there. That was the strength of this offense. It was the best rated unit on the team as I look across my ratings, and now they go from top 2 in the NFL in terms of skill position group to bottom 5. And that is a humongous swing. I think that the success of Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay can be largely attributed to the fact that Chris Godwin and Mike Evans were his top 2 targets. And now that he's going to have to get it done with, the second tier up against, again, not like a especially stalwart defense that the Atlanta Hawks are bringing to town. Excuse me, the Atlanta Falcons. I'm already on NBA mode. The Atlanta Falcons are bringing to town. Then, this is still going to be a challenge to go score for score with a team that has, what you used to have in an elite skill position group. I guess at least some silver lining for the Bucks that they do have 3 running backs. It's a little bit of a 3-headed monster where no guy is like especially stand out, but they all kind of contribute. So maybe they can lean into the run a bit, which would protect their defense, which, as you mentioned, was pretty horrific. But I downgrade the Bucks offense to 17th best in the NFL. They still have a very decent offensive line, and I think Baker Mayfield is still at worst league average. So I think this is still somewhat of a high floor unit, even in the absence of the key wide receivers there. And I think the price has swung a bit too far in favor of Atlanta. As currently rostered, assuming that the Bucks basically no other surprise injuries come out of last night's carnage, I would make them 1-point dogs on the road here. So this is a bet on Tampa Bay or a pass. But boy, is it tough to go back to the well, having bet Tampa against Baltimore and seen, just absolute comical effort level on defense from a tackling standpoint. And now you bring Bijan Robinson to town. So there are certainly positives here for Atlanta. I will note, though, that Kirk Cousins does not seem to be perfectly healthy. The tape from Sunday against the Seahawks was pretty brutal for him. He seems to be more Stack-Chu-esque, and I don't know if he aggravated something injury-wise or it was just a bad day. But, if you are willing to bring the blitz, and Todd Bowles is doing some really creative things with his blitz packages, then maybe that's enough to help tilt things in favor of Tampa Bay here. So very, very small angle, very, very small edge for me on the Bucks, and gotta say I don't love it.
Yeah, it'll be huge red flags for Cousins if he can't light up this Bucks defense, if not to the same extent that he did a couple of weeks ago when he had the best game of his career against Tampa. But with how bad this Bucks secondary is, you would think that Cousins should be able to look more competent than he did against the Seahawks, and he looked dreadful in that game. It wasn't just that he was a statue, it's that he was sailing open passes from a clean pocket as well. It just seemed like something was wrong across the board. All right, let's move to Saints Chargers. Chargers coming off the loss to go to 3-3. They are 7.5-point favorites against Spencer Rattler and friends. The total is 39.5. Did the outcome and the gameplay of that Chargers-Cardinals game change how you think of the Chargers much?
It was the most frustrating type of NFL game, Jay, where I feel like my opinion, which was different than market on both units for the Chargers, was validated correctly. but it didn't manifest a winning bet. I hate when that happens. But I think the market is still too high on this Chargers defense. I think the market is still too low on this Chargers offense. And I don't 100% know how to realize that into a bet in this particular game, which is frustrating me. Justin Herbert, I thought, looked fine. He was able to kind of move the ball very effectively against, a very limited Cardinals defense. It was a little bit of just they don't really seem to have a clear vision of who they wanted to be when they got into the red zone, and they were very willing to take field goals in a game where they were playing with fire as they gave the ball back to Arizona with a chance to bleed the clock and win. So poorly managed game, I thought, from the head coach, and just in general, I think there is validation that the market is too high on the Chargers defense and too low on the Chargers offense. The Saints are a pretty impossible team to price for this game. I'm assuming that there are no reinforcements coming in the wide receiver. From the absence of Shaheed and Olave, that those must be relatively long time frame injuries as the Saints are out there bringing in, warm bodies to backfill. And I think Spencer Rattler has proven that he is a very green rookie. And with the pass protection that's provided by the current state of the offensive line, this is a bottom 5 offense in the NFL. It may continue to make the Chargers defense overrated, but I think the bigger question is, can the Chargers offense finally get into the end zone here, which would make them a place to make this a spot to lay the points or play the over. My fare for this game is just a hair under 7, which makes me more inclined to play an over again. My fair total on this one is 41.2. So I think I'm going to end up playing over 39.5 and just cross my fingers that there's a little more red zone efficiency.
Okay, past 2 games, the Chargers have had a above water pass rate over expectation. Do you think that is predictive of how they're going to play going forward? And if so, what do you think the best way is to bet into that?
I would expect that when they watch the tape, they are probably going to be satisfied and happy with with the way that their offense was from an efficiency standpoint, with a decision to be more pass heavy. The pass protection is excellent. Justin Herbert is able to, make precision passes deep down the field. He had some beautiful balls last night. Ultimately, the fact that he's throwing to Jalen Reagor and Jalen Reagor fumbles into the end zone, costing them probably the, kind of what ended up being an extremely high leverage possession. That's a black stain on the front office for the way they've put the skill position group together. I'm glad that they are not continuing to try to keep pushing J.K. Dobbins into 30 carries per game type of territory. I don't think he can handle that, and I don't think that makes for efficient offense. So I guess I'm expecting that they continue to be a above expectation passing unit, and I think that will be successful, and I think that could bear fruit, particularly in this game. So Chargers team total over, Chargers the full game over, I think are my 2 angles on this one against the Saints.
Okay, before we get to Vikings-Rams this Saturday night, number 3, Penn State continues their quest for a national title as they travel to Camp Randall for a showdown with Wisconsin. Coverage of the battle starts at 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. All right, Vikings are 3.5-point favorites on Thursday Night Football at the Rams. The total is 48. The Rams are only a game behind the Niners now, which is incredible. Did how the Vikings performed against the Lions change how you think about Minnesota going forward, or was that largely a par performance?
Yeah, the game behind the Niners with the tiebreak, having the one head-to-head improbable victory over the Niners. My numbers for the Vikings do not change at all coming out of that Lions game. My numbers for the Rams go up a hair as I'm expecting Cooper Kupp to play. I think that this number should be inside of 3. I am actually already bet this game at a bad number, apparently, if 3.5 was available. I laid 3. I'm sorry, I took the +3 with the Rams, expecting this that a lot of the success we saw with Jared Goff against the blitz heavy Vikings defense can be replicated, emulated, impersonated by McVay and Stafford. This is sort of Stafford's calling card, taking on defenses like the Bucs on their Super Bowl run, taking on defenses like Brian Flores's, where if you are bringing extra pressure, if you are using the run blitz, if you are using just in general an aggressive style against a Rams offense, you are going to leave yourself exposed to the machinations of Sean McVay. And with Cooper Kupp available in this contest, this spells trouble, in my opinion, for the Vikings defense. I currently have the Vikings defense rated outside of my top 10. This was a little bit of a controversial opinion. I think a lot of people hold them up as clearly top 10 based on what we've seen so far this season. But I have questions about some of the coverage, particularly if you can kind of get past, create space in that secondary. And I have questions about their tackling at the second level. You saw some of the explosive run plays Jahmyr Gibbs was able to come up with against this unit once he got to the second level. And I think Kyren Williams can do a lot of the same. So Minnesota, to me, looks like a little bit of a boomer bust, fragile defense. And I think the Rams can take advantage of that to the tune of being able to control the game state here. And for what it's worth, a lot of people, I think, have the Rams defense right now rated bottom 5. But they're coming together. This young pass rush does seem to have life. And while they are going to have an extremely tough test against an exceptional pass protection unit the Vikings have out there, if there are some high leverage downs, if the Vikings are at a negative game state and you can get to Sam Darnold, then I think there's definitely scope for the Rams to be able to get some key stops in this one to either give themselves an opportunity to get inside the number or to help put away a win if they are leading. Now, I am maybe, again, a little bit on an island, and this is, again, a fragile opinion, but I think the Rams are not out of the playoff picture. And I think as they continue to get healthier, and particularly bringing back this wide receiving core, which is outstanding, you're going to have growth with the defense combined with health improvement on the offense, improvement of the health of the offensive line, cohesion of the offensive line, greater success in the running game, more comfort for Matthew Stafford, and just more optionality for Sean McVay to really kind of tilt the field in his advantage. And so even with 4 losses, I think the Rams are a team that you probably have to keep your eyes open, as could be spoiler, much like they were last year in a very similar position.
Yeah, I have the Rams 15% to make the playoffs, so still somewhat live, and that pretty much matches up with market. I think it's good that they've ended the Tre'Davious White experiment, seemingly, because it feels like injuries have just taken their toll there. On the Rams, though, Drew, to me, the most interesting thing about them is, do you think that Matthew Stafford might be on the Tre'Davious White path, because he is 33rd in PFF grade. He is 25th in EPA per play, sandwiched between Daniel Jones and Bo Nix. Do you think that's a product of just not having Kupp and Nakua and just not having enough weapons, having Demarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson as kind of lead guys, Jordan Whittington, etc.? Or do you think that Stafford has actively gotten worse?
To give a hat tip to Ben Baldwin, it's all about the protection in a Sean McVay system. And the pass protection this year to this point has been terrible. And that, I think, in a lot of ways is influencing the production, the EPA that you're seeing from Stafford. And now with, particularly with Alaric Jackson back, as he missed time with suspension and then has had injury issues, I think just cohesion across that front unit with good tackle play should give you better Stafford play. So I think there is absolutely watch for Matt Stafford currently. I will tell you that I have him sort of in the middle of the pack in terms of projecting for the rest of the season as far as quarterback play goes. But with Kupp coming back and with the offensive line getting healthier, there is 100% scope for people to look at what he's done so far and underrate what he will do for the rest of the season.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I think that he will be better on Thursday night. And yeah, at current prices, Rams plus 3.5 would be my bet as well. All right. 2 storied franchises renew their rivalry on Sunday night. Drew, find out if Dak Prescott and the Cowboys can get back on track after their bye week when they face off against Brock Purdy and the 49ers. Coverage of the matchup starts at 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up to BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE, and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code BETEDGE. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code BETEDGE when you sign up. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE and get your $1,500 first bet offer today. Okay, let's close out talking about the NBA Conference Champion markets. Let's start in the East. My beloved Boston Celtics are plus 170 to go back to back. The Knicks are plus 350. The Sixers, who are dealing with, I think, some real concerns on the health front, they're 5-1. The Bucks plus 650. Also health concerns there with Chris Middleton. And then you have, I would say, the four vaguely realistic long shots in the Magic, 16-1, Cavs 17-1, and then Heat and Pacers 25-1. No one else will be winning the Eastern Conference. Do you have a bet in this market?
Yeah, you could have said the Celtics are plus 170. No one else will be winning the Eastern Conference. In my opinion, I think plus 170 is a very favorable price. Obviously, making a bet that pays plus 170 in October that resolves at the end of May is not the greatest, time value of money. But I don't have a bigger edge on any future in any market than Celtics to win the East. I think that they are a clear 5 wins better than any other team. And this is not assuming much out of Kristaps Porzingis in the regular season. I still have them as clearly the best team in the Eastern Conference. And I see some pretty clear stratification after that. I would make the Knicks the second best team in the East with a bullet. I have 4 wins between the Knicks and then a cluster of teams, including Philly, Milwaukee, and Cleveland, that all have huge downside potential and no real interest in any kind of bullish case for Philly with the kind of the way that things are going for Embiid's availability and Paul George's injury status. No real interest in Milwaukee as a bull case with what's going on with Chris Middleton and how much they're going to ask out of Giannis Antetokounmpo and his potential for picking up another injury. And then Cleveland is just a kind of a mess in terms of misfit parts where you've never really seen the best of Garland while Mitchell's on the floor. You've never really seen the best of Mobley while Allen is on the floor. And those are 4 important players that need to play together, and they need to play together well. And I'm not sure that a coaching change is going to magically fix that. So that sort of second tier after the Celtics and the Knicks of Philly, Cleveland, Milwaukee are all red flags for me. And then the tier below them of Indy, Orlando, and Miami all have limitations where I don't know. They could certainly jump that second tier, but I don't see them storming into being, a potential home team in the second round of the playoffs. So I think this is pretty uninspiring content, honestly, to talk about the Eastern Conference, because when I look at the odds board, it looks solved. And when I look at, kind of upside, all I see is green. So Celtics for me in the East. And if you want some kind of fun, long shot, no one saw it coming type of take, I make the Detroit Pistons a 31-win team, which, believe it or not, is good enough to get them into the 10th spot in a very weak Eastern Conference. And so I bet them to make the play-in at plus 350. And I think, that's going to be the only bad team that I have any bull case for this year.
Yeah, I like that. I think that with Toronto, with their injury situation, that has dented them a bit, even just like losing Bruce Brown for a while, just because they have so few competent players on that team after you get past the first four, really. And RJ Barrett's banged up as well. So that's bad news for the Raptors, good news for the Pistons. If the Pistons, if that is considered good news for the Pistons if they do want to start winning, which I think they do to an extent, coming off the worst season in franchise history. I perhaps unsurprisingly agree with you on the Celtics and the fact that they are plus 170 being value, because I think it gets a little bit underrated how historically great this team was last season. And it also gets a bit underrated that they were missing, to my mind, their clear second best player for virtually the entirety of the playoffs and still won the championship in a canter. And I get that they had injury luck at every turn, though they didn't have injury luck in the finals. And they beat a team that was legitimate and had been the second best team in the NBA after they made their trades for Gafford and PJ Washington. And the Celtics, even without Porzingis, outside of really game one, in terms of him in a fully usable, optimal role, they still absolutely crushed the Mavericks. And they took care of business throughout the East as well. And Tatum and Brown are still young, and they're more likely, I think, to get better than worse. Derek White's only 30. Porzingis on average, even though everyone is just like, oh, Porzingis will definitely get hurt. Like on average, he's going to give them more than he gave them last year in the playoffs. So I think you add all that up, and the Celtics shouldn't be plus 170. I think the Bucks should be more clustered with the Knicks and the Sixers. Like I don't think the Bucks are materially less likely to win the East than the Knicks or the Sixers. The Knicks have 6 players at the moment, and that lack of depth, I do think, is an issue, even if they perhaps increase their ceiling, trading Randall and Dante for Cat. Sixers have a ton of upside, but I think it's a huge red flag that Embiid isn't ready to start the season, despite seemingly having no individual aggravating incident on that knee. To the best of my knowledge, it's just that might just be a degenerative thing. So that is a problem. I do think the Bucks are fully healthy and Middleton's able to get right, then I think they have just as high a ceiling as the Sixers and the Knicks. Do you think that the Bucks are being a little bit underrated because of how blah last season was?
It's possible. I still see them as fundamentally flawed in terms of point of attack defense. They didn't solve that. All the swings they took in free agency to try to fortify their depth were kind of they were fine, but not really moving the needle for me in terms of win equity. They have 4+ players. Giannis and Dame are clear pluses, particularly on the offensive side. They have Chris Middleton and Brook Lopez, who are on the clear downside of their careers as far as aging curve goes. And if they get anyone to step forward and join them as a fifth, then yeah, they have a nice closing 5, which makes them a little bit interesting and dangerous in the playoffs. But I still see them as somewhat flawed when it comes to point of attack defense. In contrast, right now, the Celtics have 10+ players on their roster, which is absolutely insane. And they're well-balanced offense and defense. They have redundancy at point of attack defense with Holiday and White. They have flexibility defensively with Tatum being able to guard bigs. And I mean, plus 170 is going to feel pretty silly in May when they lose one game on their way to another Eastern Conference title.
Wow. No, I love the optimism. I will say that most of the time there is very little value in like deep long shots in markets like this, unless there's some fundamental mispricing of the team's rating. Like I think there was in 21-22 when the Celtics were 50-1 to win the East, the year that they lost to the Warriors in the finals. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, you're just better rolling over series prices on these teams. Like, I kind of look at the Cavs price and I see that the Cavs have, upside and a lot of youth, and they have a new coach, and Mobley could take a leap. And I think Garland is going to be a lot better than he was last year. But like, realistically, like the Cavs are going to be like 5-1 if they play the Celtics in a playoff series. At some point, and it's like, well, there's not much meat on the bone there, because then they still got to win 2 other series, and they still got to, make the playoffs and all that. And then you start adding up the prices, and it just doesn't seem like it's super worthwhile betting 17-1 right now on the Cleveland Cavaliers to be representing the East in the NBA Finals. So yeah, my only bet in this market at these prices would be Boston. Let's go to the West. We have the Thunder as 3-1 favorites. The Nuggets and Mavs and Wolves are all 5-1, and then the Suns and Grizzlies are kind of that next tier at 12-1 and 14-1. Then you have the Warriors, Lakers, Pelicans, Kings, Rockets. Do you have any bet in this market?
Oof. So this goes from talking about the East, which is solved, to talking about the West, which is just flat out gambling. I love the way that the West is stacked up from an entertainment perspective this year. These teams are all like designed to defeat one another, but not defeat everyone, which is going to make for just incredible specific team by team matchups. And I think that in general, the kind of the ordering by market is reasonable. But I don't agree that a team like the Thunder, even if they are considered the best in the West, I don't agree that plus 350 represents fair. My fair for them was actually plus 446. I think that it is a bit of a flat earth once you get to a final 8. And honestly, I think if you really, really love the Thunder, just keep your money in pocket and wait for series by series betting, because the Thunder are going to get matched up against teams with the likes of a Doncic or a Jokic, where, there's going to be betting opportunities as the market assumes that the best player is on the other team, as SGA remains criminally underrated. But yeah, I think ultimately the West is very, very wide open. After you get past agreement, in my opinion, with the top team in terms of wins being the Thunder, it gets a little clustered for me. I have relatively narrow margin between 2 through 6. Phoenix, Minnesota, Dallas, Denver, and shockingly Golden State, I think, are all within a win or two of each other around 50. And that is maybe a bit of a divergence from the market, as Phoenix and Golden State seem to be somewhat cool. Win totals for Phoenix right now, 47.5. Win totals for Golden State, 44.5. I think that those teams, I think that the top end talent for Phoenix is better than the market is recognizing currently. And I think the depth for Golden State is better than the market is recognizing currently. And so if there are two surprises in the mix for a top 2 seed in the West, those would be the two I would tap. Denver to me is a bit overrated for 2 reasons. Number one, their depth is hugely problematic, combined with the fact that their second banana in Jamal Murray took an obvious step back towards the end of last season that carried through the Olympics. And I also look at the minutes usage for Nikola Jokic last year and say, well, are they really going to play him 2,700 minutes in the regular season again? That was his career high, and it looked like it might have had an issue once they got to the playoffs, and he was a hair out of gas for the first time I've ever seen Jokic being kind of looking a little exhausted or a little out of it. So I would expect that the Nuggets will be clear of a play-in spot, but I think them kind of finishing 4, 5, 6 is in within the scope. Minnesota and Dallas are total wild cards to me because their talent is undeniably awesome, Dallas in particular, but I still would love to see them be able to do it over a sustained period of time, as opposed to just kind of catching lightning in a bottle the way both teams did towards the end of last season. So yeah, I think you could basically give me any order of the top 6 there, and I would kind of nod and say, yeah, that sounds about right. Which means that teams like Memphis, the Pelicans, the Lakers, the Kings, and the Rockets, interestingly enough, are all clustered for 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. One of those teams likely out of the mix and in the lottery, and 2 of those teams not being in the playoff picture is interesting to me. I am higher than market on the Rockets. I am lower than market on the Pelicans and the Grizzlies. And I think in general, the Grizzlies is my hottest take, as they, as you mentioned, their price would say they should be in that top 6 mix and not Golden State. And I would tell you that I see them more as a 43-ish win team, and I have red flags all over the place for them because they are relatively thin. Their depth is quite poor, and they are coming into the season with Jaren Jackson Jr. already injured, and expecting him to take the leap to where he was 2 years ago in the absence of a player like Steven Adams playing next to him, I think is a bit of an ask, combined with Ja Morant staying healthy, considering how his style of play and his type of injuries recently is also a bit of an ask. So cool on Memphis, cool on Pelicans for reasons we've talked about this week already, and warm on Houston, warm on Golden State, warm on Phoenix in the West.
Okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I agree on the Grizzlies in terms of their median outcome perhaps being closer to the Warriors than the win totals suggest. At the same time, I think that Memphis have high-end outcomes that exceed what Golden State can get to, just because Golden State, I don't think they really have the talent ceiling to like win 3 playoff series in a row realistically, unless, you know, Jonathan Kuminga becomes like a, you know, all-star star type of player. But I think with the Grizzlies, like they do have, if there is health, which is perhaps unlikely but still very plausible, and you have Morant, Bane, Jackson, Marcus Smart, choose your 5th guy, who I think might end up being like Vince Williams a lot of the time, who no one knows because no one watched the Grizzlies play last year. Between the upside of Edie, I think this defense is going to be really good in the regular season just because the team is going to be massive. I think that the Grizzlies do have upside. I think the thing to think about with this market and the teams at the top, like again, it's the rolling over series prices. Like if you're a minus 140 favorite in 3 consecutive series, that means you're plus 400. Like there's just not a lot of meat on the bone.
That's where I'm at with prices. That's what I don't think anyone can be shorter than about 20%. No way.
Yes. I think that's pretty reasonable. Now I think a lot of people will be more bullish than the Thunder than that. But the thing with the Thunder is that there might be a bit of conflation of regular season dominance and that translating very cleanly and linearly to postseason dominance. And I think there are reasons to be a bit skeptical of that because of one, their kind of lack of passing and kind of elite ball handling outside of Shea. And then we'll see what we get from Jalen Williams, because he wasn't very good in that Dallas series. Right. And then secondly, like they just still don't have that really clean option to play the 4, I think. Where you don't have that kind of like all of their team. It's weird. Their team is like 7-footers or guys under 6'7". Like they don't have that kind of middle tier guy that I think, and even like he's not that good, but like if they just had like a PJ Washington type that they could just slot in to play smallish ball 4, I think that would really help. And also, this is going to, I think, a little bit forgotten. Mark Daigneault got put in an absolute clown suit in that Dallas series. He got absolutely trucked by Jason Kidd. I will go to my grave having no idea how still in game 5 he's still putting Lou Dort in the dunker spot. And so Shea just has no room to operate whatsoever. And Shea was kind of gallant in that series. And I think everyone's opinion of Shea should go up after that. But the rest of the team did not cover themselves in glory. So I think the Thunder are the most likely team to win the West. I think they are the best team in the West, but they still have questions to be answered. With you, none of these long shots are particularly appealing. I don't really see the West winning upside for the Lakers, the Pelicans, the Kings, the Rockets, these type of teams. The Suns I like as a regular season potential juggernaut. Again, worry about them in the playoffs like we talked about yesterday. Before we close, if you had to choose one, price agnostic, well, they all have the same price. The Nuggets, the Mavs, or the Wolves, who do you think is most likely to win the West?
I think it's the Mavs.
Okay.
And it's pretty weak take. And I think that they probably need one more roster adjustment. There's people who are probably high on the Klay Thompson move. I was not. I think he's pretty clearly a minus player right now. And I kind of liked what they were building with the moves they made at the end of last season and the way that they were kind of putting that team together. The big question for me about the Mavs is really just the way that Boston solved them Boston solved that offense and the way they decided to defend the Mavs. I would love to know if that becomes sort of viral and if it's repeatable. Like, and maybe other teams just can't do it because they don't have Tatum and they don't have White and Holiday. But I am interested to know if they have another step forward offensively with that group. And I see more high-end ceiling than I do with even the Nuggets, because my numbers on a bunch of these Nuggets players who matter a ton, MPJ, Murray, the loss of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope could be massive for them. Like, you're backfilling with some bad minutes potentially, particularly defensively. I think the Nuggets are kind of quietly a sell, and nobody's really recognizing it because it is very, very tough to bet against the best player in basketball, in Nikola Jokic. But and then the Wolves, to me, ultimately, I'm trying to tell myself that Cat for DiVincenzo and Randall was a win-win for both teams. And if Anthony Edwards takes his next step forward progression-wise, then it will be. That team to me still has some flaws in a playoff series that they need to work their way through to kind of prove that they should be the guys. And I don't know, maybe I'm just being recency bias here because Mavericks were the winners last year, but they look the most playoff resilient to me of those three.
Yep, I think that's reasonable. I think the Wolves are a very interesting team where I think they've gotten better for the regular season in terms of their outlook just by trading one player for two good players and increasing their depth, even if Cat is better than both of those guys. At the same time, like, there's just something kind of gnawing about that team where they just don't have that many smart players on offense, and Randall certainly does not help that. I've watched an ungodly amount of Julius Randall in my time. I think Dante is really going to help, and I think Dante should close. I think he should close every night. Like, they need his shooting, but between you just like imagine betting on the Wolves to win the West, and you have Julius Randall and Anthony Edwards making decisions for your team at the end of games. And maybe Edwards got better as a passer and made big leaps in the playoffs, but there is something, it feels like it's going to go south for that team. And I think they have a lot of depth, and I think they're going to be really good, and the defense will be good again, but it feels a slightly off. Mike Conley is getting to the point where he's probably going to fall off a bit more, and that'll be offset a bit by DiVincenzo. I think that's the over Conley.
Whole reason I like the trade, honestly. You've backstopped the potential for disaster of Mike Conley being done.
Yeah, I think in a way the Wolves lineup I like most is Dante, Edwards, McDaniels, Naz, and Rudy. And it's that kind of all the pieces fit, but it's like if you have Julius Randle on the bench, like, it just doesn't feel like that has a massive talent ceiling, even if it clicks a little bit better. So I don't know what really to think of the Wolves. I think they'll be a very good regular season team, but I worry a bit about their playoff ceiling, which may have reduced a little bit just because Cat has more talent, I think, than either of the guys coming in for him.
So you're saying Julius Randle should be the sixth man for the Wolves?
I think arguably he should be, because he's a bit of I think Naz.
It wouldn't be bad if he was getting most of his usage against second teams. I would be pretty happy if I was a Wolves fan.
It's not going to happen because he's Julius Randle. He's made an all-NBA team. But I think Naz and his kind of quick trigger shooting and superior defense, I think, to Randle is a bit cleaner of a fit. But I don't think it matters that much. But I don't think Julius Randle's going to cop coming off the bench. But we'll see. All right, we are done for today. Don't forget to check out NBCSports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Also, a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From myself and Drew, we'll see you soon.